Good morning. Hello. Happy Friday. Today is the day when we host our Friday goal setting and live stream, weekly goal setting live stream. And we are also going to jump into some reading comprehension tips, specifically about skimming and scanning and how you can incorporate those into helping you with your reading comprehension. So, first, hello. If you are part of the replay crew, definitely check out the description. There are going to be some links to where we start and stop different ideas or concepts. And hopefully you also have a little bit of coffee. I do. My throat feels much improved. I have been sick. If you were following, especially our chaos stream on Wednesday, we did a chaos stream on Wednesday. That was chaos. The chaos stream was all of it. So if it's your first time here, hello, hi, I'm Terrell. This is Absolutely Studying. I chat about study tips, organizational hacks, and goal setting that's going to keep you on track. So what we're going to do today is we're going to chat first about the skimming and scanning, how that's going to improve your reading comprehension and how you can add it to your study activities in order to really get a good boost of understanding during your study sessions. The next thing we are going to do after that is to set our weekly goals. I'll go over my goals for last week. You can do an audit and do the same, and maybe have some chit chat. So I am going to get ready to jump into and share my screen for the reading comprehension part of the stream. We'll tackle all of the work first so we can just sit back and chit chat afterwards. And while I am doing that, please don't forget to like the stream coming in, subscribe to my channel. I have big goals for 2023, and I would love it if you were here to share them with me. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's just get into all of it while you do your part. So here we go. How do skimming and scanning improve reading and understanding? Skimming and scanning can boost your study sessions. And right now we're going to talk about how to improve reading comprehension with skimming and scanning. If you do want to pick up the study guide template or any other resources that we go over in this article, you can check the description below. There are links to everything. This is just a study guide template, so it can help you to plan out your study sessions for the whole year and really get focused and get everything studied and understood. So reading a textbook is boring. It's hard, and I don't want to do it. I don't think that's the tone I wrote it with. I think it was more, reading a textbook is boring, it's hard, and I don't want to do it. But I have to, and so do you. Textbooks are dry in college and university. They are fact-filled, incredibly technical, and really not all that interesting. This makes for a challenging read. Transitioning from high school, where you are often taught topics for several classes, and the teacher reviews them painstakingly, is a thing of the past. And that is a hard truth to understand when you're first starting in university, because you go to class and the professor's up there teaching. And you are so used to high school where they go up there and they teach a topic and they introduce it to you and they explain it. And then the next class, they'll start going through examples, and they go through examples on their own. Then they go through examples with you, and then they check those examples. Then they walk you through to the right answer for those examples. Then they have you try examples on your own. They correct them with you, and then they send you home with homework. So there's so many more steps. And then the homework is checked, and then it starts showing up on tests and assignments. And that is starkly different than university. In university, you go to class, they will chat about a topic, and then the next class you come back and they've moved on. Like that topic that you talked about last week, that's gone. They're not talking about that anymore. Now they're talking about this, and this is what's important now. And so that's something that's really, really hard to get used to in university when you're first starting out is that there's no doubling back to clarify any information. The professor will introduce a topic to you, they'll explain it, and then they move on. After that, it's your responsibility to be able to really get a good grasp of it. It's your responsibility to be able to continue to learn more about that topic, to make sure you understand it, to make sure that you can work with it and you can do those examples, and that you can apply that information to different concepts and generalize it. And so that's all put on you. They don't do that anymore. They don't talk about that. That's your responsibility. It's just the professor's job to teach it and introduce it and kind of outline it and explain it. So if you aren't able to really ask the questions that you need to know in the moment, then it's going to be hard for you to amend any inconsistencies or anything that you don't comprehend the first time around. The other issue is that you can come back the next day and ask for an explanation for something that you didn't quite understand in the previous class, but that explanation will be isolated from the rest of the information. So you have that explanation now, but then the professor moves on to the current topic, which is already departed from what you spoke about the previous class, more than likely. And so now you're not going to go from that explanation to continue to build upon that foundation. Instead, that explanation is given, you write it down, you add it to your notes, and then you move on to the current task or the current topic. And it might not be something wildly difficult. It might still be adjacent, but it's not the same thing. So let's look at an example. So say you're learning about porifera, which are sea sponges. So if in one class you are learning about their basic makeup and anatomy, the next class you might spend, most, if not all of that first class learning about that. But the next one, now you are talking about their eating habits. So if you had a question about their structure or their skeletal system, I understand that. Let me add a little interjection here where I understand that a sponge does not have a skeleton per se, but it does have a system that it has in place of that skeleton. So that's why I'm using the word skeletal system. It is a loose term, but we'll talk about that when I start introducing the learn sections next year. Anyways, you have a question about their quote unquote skeletal system. Well, the professor will explain that. They will talk about how the sponge keeps its structure given its habitat and living situation. But then perhaps they're not talking about the skeletal system. They already talked about that when she was talking about the anatomy. Now she's talking about how the sponge feeds. So yeah, you might still be talking just about something adjacent to it, but she's explained that, she's moved on, she's back onto the regular discussion about what the sponge eats. And so that's how I'm saying they'll continue to move on. So they might not be light years away from where they were, but they're no longer telling it. You're no longer going to have the opportunity to spend an entire hour talking about how that skeletal system exists and what factors go into it, how it actually supports the rest of life, how the support of the sponge ties into how it functions, how it lives, how it fits into that environmental niche in the ocean. Instead, you're on something a little bit different, which can still be helpful, but you never know how far away you're going to move from a topic given the timeline of the course. So that's a really, really important thing that you have to get used to. And that usually happens like day one of class, where all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I thought we were talking about this yesterday, and now we're talking about that. And that is a wild departure from what I thought we were going to do. So, okay, I guess I just need to catch up. And because it's taught like this, the classes and the materials move so much faster. So now the producer will introduce a subject, give you an overview, and then move on, often within the same lecture. It's then put on you to go home and examine it in detail to learn the material. The responsibility is on you to understand, not the instructor to teach. This can be jarring to many students, especially in the first year. Classes move very fast. You're expected to learn so much in such a short time while being mainly left on your own. This is why it's so vital to develop efficient study strategies. Learning the best and most effective study tactics can help you to move through the content much faster. This will allow you to review it more often, resulting in better memory retention and recall. Increasing the understanding. Increasing reading comprehension does not only help with improving your reading skills, but it also translates into doing much better on assignments. For example, it can help you better analyze and communicate your supporting arguments when writing essays. This will allow you to better showcase your understanding, translating into better grades. Today, we are going to break down this approach by adding these practices, by adding the practices of skimming and scanning to your study session. You can boost the efficacy of your reading strategy. We deep dive to find out what skimming and scanning are, how they differ from each other, and how they each boost the reading session independently. So this is twofold. These are two separate. So this does work twofold. Skimming and scanning, I keep using them as one word, skimming and scanning. But they are two separate and distinct items to add to your study session. So let's go through them one by one. What is skimming? Skimming is quickly reading over a section of tests. Skimming is quickly reading over a section of text. Skimming is quickly reading over a section of text to get a general idea of its contents. This is not a thorough read-through. Instead, you are only allowing your eyes to pass over the words while absorbing the general idea of the paragraph. This practice lets you preview the page's contents before you actually read it. This is called priming. It prepares or primes your brain to predict the content to come. So that when you actually read the passage, you already have some familiarity with the information. So when you are skimming, first, choose an endpoint for the piece of text you're going to read. So don't just go through the entire chapter, actually look at a distinct start and end point for what you're about to skim or prime. Begin by looking through it and reading the headings and subheadings. Next, go through and read the bold words and vocabulary. Captions and diagrams can also be surveyed in depth. So when you see a caption or a diagram or a chart or anything, stop and actually look through it, read through that, read the caption underneath, read the different steps in the diagram or process. That can actually be gone through in depth when you're doing your skimming and scanning item task. Finally, use your finger to guide you as you quickly pass over or speed read the selected text. So it's important that you don't stop and read every word. You're just using either your finger or a ruler to block out the word before and just slide your eyes over it, just skim over it, almost like you're speed reading or just previewing the text, just scanning the page. You don't actually want to stop and read it word for word. It's not time for that. What we want to do is we want to kind of get the general layout of the lesson, of the information, and just preview or see what it is. This skimming a passage is kind of like watching a movie trailer. You get the general idea about it, what it's about. You get to see the highlights of it, but you're not actually getting to read all of the fine details. How does skimming improve reading comprehension and vocabulary? Skimming over a passage is a great way to get a generalized idea of the contents before you read. The idea behind this is that you will pick up some of the information in this first read through. By skimming through or priming yourself on a passage, you will naturally pick up the overall sense of the concept before sitting down and reading it in detail. Since you already have a generalized idea of what you will learn after skimming, you won't be learning the concept but reviewing it. You won't be learning the concept, but reviewing it when you finally read the passage thoroughly. You already know where this journey of information will take you. Now, you just need to learn the details of how you are going to get there. So there are some strategies that can help you read. There are some strategies that will help you improve your reading comprehension just a little bit further. To make the skimming process even more effective, first, try creating a list of questions that you want to learn about as you read. Write this list down and try to answer them during your reading session. And as you read, record the answers in your notes. So this is an activity you do after skimming, but before reading. So depending on how long the passage is or how in depth it goes, maybe you might have some questions that you're really curious about. Maybe from looking at a diagram, you're really excited to learn how one step happens or anything like that. Write those questions down as they pop into your head, as you kind of get curious about them, write them down. If nothing pops into your head that sparks your curiosity, go through and actually make questions based on the headings or anything like that about what you will learn. And this is going to make your learning of this material just that much more important because you're going to be more engaged. Now you're not just reading to take in the information, you're reading in search of answers. What is scanning? Scanning is when you quickly read over a piece of text to review the material. This is done after you have already read the section carefully. This helps you review and refresh the information after taking it in. You will refresh on essential points when you look at the material after you have already learned it. This is crucial because of how much you will forget. This is crucial because you will forget much of the new information you learn after walking away from your study session. Scanning a passage regularly will reintroduce these facts, making it much more likely that you will remember them in the future. So let's look at the process of scanning and what you would do in a scanning session So when you sit down to do a scanning session, first, use your finger to guide you as you speed read over the important sections. So this is very similar to what you did in the skimming process, except for the key difference is you're doing this after reading. So you've already skimmed, you've already wrote down your questions, you've already read, you've already answered those questions. Now in a separate study session, you're going to go back and you're going to go over one of the sections you read and you're just going to speed read it again. So the real difference here is that you don't necessarily have to read over the entire section of text again. Instead, you can limit yourself to going over the essential points you have highlighted. Make sure you cover vocabulary, names, dates, etc. So for me, for example, I am one of those people who keep my textbooks, so I mark them up. I will highlight right in my textbook. So in my textbook, I now have a different color code. I have a color coding highlighting strategy, and I'm not going to jump into that here, I will, here, let me make a note to add that link for color coding. And how, and so then you can check out that article and how it pertains to this particular study strategy. So during one of my study sessions or during my reading session, I will actually start highlighting my notes. And I have 5 different colors that I use, and those colors are all assigned to specific meanings. So when you go back and scan, if you have highlighted in your notes or in your textbook, then it's really helpful because now you can kind of speed read or just glance over the parts that are not highlighted. And then when you do see something that is highlighted, regardless of the color, you can stop there and you can read that sentence. And that's going to help you to go over that information that you might have forgotten or that might not be as obvious. This, number 1, is going to refresh you on all of the important aspects of the concept you're reading. And it is also going to save a ton of time because now you're not just reading the entire section over again. And again, now you're looking at it with intention. You're actually searching for something. You're searching for important points rather than answers in this case, but you're not just reading to get through it again. Now you're going through and you're looking for important points to refresh you on the essential information that you need to remember. So how does scanning improve reading comprehension and vocabulary? Scanning is an excellent way to refresh yourself on the information you have already covered. If scanning is we need a drink. We're still a little bit dry. Scanning is an excellent way to refresh yourself on the information you have already covered. It will help you recall information you might have forgotten since you last covered it. Unfortunately, the unfortunate truth about learning is that you will forget about 60% of new material within 24 hours of learning it. This is without any recall or reading is hard sometimes. This is without any recall of the subject or intervention. So much study time is wasted relearning concepts that could have been salvaged in this window. Scanning is a great way to prevent this. You will retain a little more each time you go over what you have learned. You will retain a little more each time you go over what you have learned. This is because you are exercising the pathway to the knowledge, reinforcing it. So at test time, you can find it more easily. So that goes back into the idea of mental associations and memory cues. So just because you forget 60% of the new material that you learned, so when you sit down and you learn new material, everything new you learned goes into that 100%. So within 24 hours of learning that whole section of 100% of new material, you're going to forget about 60% of it. So you're only going to remember 40%. So this 60% that you've forgotten, it's very important to note that you haven't lost the information. It's not gone. What is gone is the ability to retrieve it. You don't know where you stored it. It's just not there anymore. So you need help to retrieve it. So it is like you dropped 100 items in a field. And now you're going back and trying to retrace your steps, but you only find 40 of these items. The other 60 items are not lost. They're still in the field, but because you only walked over that field once, there's no pathway to find it. So by returning over and over and over again to where you left that item, you're going to start wearing down that grass and making that pathway more stable. So by reviewing the information, by visiting it again over and over and over, you make that pathway more purposeful, you make it more evident, more obvious, and you make it easier to find. So the information's already there. Everything you've ever learned is still in there. It's still rattling around inside your head. The problem is finding it. So you have to exercise those pathways in order to make them reliable, in order to be able to find them more efficiently. So relearning the concept, going over it over and over again, revisiting it, spaced repetition is essentially what I'm explaining here. By spacing out how often you look at this information, every time you look at it, it's going to be another travel down that path. And so that's going to help you to remember how to get that information. And then you're going to remember that it's there in the first place. So that is the important thing that you need to exercise. Revisiting this information to make stable pathways, to be able to recall it when you need to know it and make those connections between it. By simply scanning over your textbook or class notes, you can prevent much of the information from evaporating away. Instead, set aside 5 to 10 minutes to breeze through this information and reinforce it before it has a chance. This will fill in many gaps that start appearing in your memory. So again, it's important to not only exercise those pathways from point A to the pathways, but also between them, because that will also link the concepts together. So being able to go over it will also fortify all of those pathways. So all of that information will link much better. It is common to go over information three or even 4 times before the fine details stick. Often you'll have to do this in many different ways as well. You can pick up my free study tracker with 20 study activities you can track to make sure that you are going over to make sure that you are studying each concept effectively. That again is linked down in the description. If you only have time for a quick study session, scanning over your notes or textbook is the perfect way to spend it. This tactic has you reinforcing information you have already learned, enhancing recall. This will make it more likely that you will remember these facts during test time, especially during test time. In a crunch, it's easier to refresh information you already know than to take in new information. It takes time and effort to learn new information. You have to open yourself to receiving. You have to open yourself to be receptive to learning, which often can't really be done in a 5-minute study period. Rather than stumbling through new material during a short study session, save the frustration and just review old data. Hit up the hot spots and review things like names, vocabularies, dates, and flowcharts in your notes. Quiz yourself or read over them and surprise yourself that something you sometimes I write things and they sound really good. And the funny thing is that I have everything read back to me before I post it, but then comes along one sentence and I'm like, I made a really good point here and it's a shame that I don't understand it. Quiz yourself or read over them and surprise yourself with some of the intricate details you have forgotten. I think that's what I wanted to say. Make sure you add these items to your notes to make it easier to use the scanning method during your next study session. Copying these items also adds improved recall on its own. Also, side note, I don't mean to go back to this again. This is totally not planned. But another way to keep track of these is the confidence tracker. I keep a confidence tracker, and there is one in the study guide template. And that confidence tracker, the idea is that when you have a topic that you really have a hard time taking in, like sometimes you're reading something and you read it over and over and over again, and you just cannot figure out this process in your mind. It just refuses to stick. Just the second you take it in, it's just like, no, purged, gone. Writing those things down, and also all of the things when you go over your notes and you're like, hey, this is new, I don't remember this. Writing those things in the confidence tracker, very helpful, because then you can just go over the confidence tracker and be like, hey, what do I know I have trouble with and I should probably focus on again, just for reasons. Then actually going through like the confidence tracker and choosing something to work on after that out of there is really helpful in, first of all, planning your study sessions. So having a couple of study sessions in the week where you are like, hey, I'm going to go through my confidence tracker and pull out one or two concepts, and I'm going to review those. And that's what I'm going to focus on because I know I struggle with those. That way you don't forget about them, because if it's something that's hard to stick for you to learn, it's also more than likely going to be hard for you to remember to study it. So if you have a list of tasks that you are literally having trouble learning and keep forgetting, then just keep a running task. And then you have a quick and handy thing that when you're sitting down, you're like, what am I going to study today? Grab that list, just grab that list and pick something off of it, or have study sessions planned throughout the week where you can pull things off of that list and study them. Strategies to improve your reading comprehension even further. To make scanning sessions even more effective, here are some tricks that you can try. Stop at each heading and quiz yourself on the concept you're about to review. Before each section, try to recall and write down the process or details of that concept before going over it. Quickly scan over a paragraph to get the general idea, then look away and see if you can fill in the gaps. Examine diagrams and charts to see if you can recite passages without reading the captions. If you write down your responses, you can compare them to the actual answers and see how you measure up. Correcting these mini quizzes is also a crucial part of the learning process. Okay, so now we went into an uncomfortably deep dive on what exactly skimming is and what exactly scanning is. So just in case we are not completely clear on the two different processes, we're now going to go into how skimming and scanning are specifically different. So skimming and scanning are incredibly similar, but they do have a few key differences. Skimming is done before you start your selected reading section to get the general idea of the passage. In contrast, scanning is done afterwards to review essential information. When skimming, you're previewing or priming the information. You're going to go over it to get the overarching ideas of the concept before you drill down on the details. This means you're going over the entire passage. Scanning is done when you've already read through the section of text. This is to review the details of the concepts you've already learned. When scanning, you don't have to re-examine the entire segment. Instead, you can skip over unimportant information and just review essential facts, diagrams, and charts. The best approach is to decide the parameters of what you need to accomplish. If you only have a short time to study, scanning over concepts is the best approach. If you have a large section of text to read, you may want to break it up into segments and skim over it first. Both of these processes independently will amplify the effects of the actual reading session. Okay, let's jump into some pro tips for skimming and scanning during your study sessions. First, sip of coffee. The coffee is cold. I cannot believe when I don't have my favorite mug, I cannot believe how quickly the coffee gets cold. Okay, pro tips. Everybody loves pro tips. You should always set clear parameters for what you want to read in a study session. This will allow you to break up your reading activities to make the most efficient use of your time. The most efficient use of your time. Okay. So what that means is if you have an entire chapter to read, do not start skimming over or scanning the entire chapter. Instead, break it down. Are there subheadings? Do those subheadings have subheadings? If not, choose one page or a handful of paragraphs at a time. Break it down to make it easier and less intimidating to read, and you will actually get it done faster because you're not exhausting yourself. You are setting clear, defined goals, and you're going to be able to learn that concept, digest that concept, take a break, reward yourself, and come back to the next one. So really break those down into something that's small. Like if you can scan, even if it's only 10 paragraphs, that's fine. That's a nice small section that is long enough for you to learn something and is long enough to contain the information you need to cover a concept, but not so long that you lose interest before you get done. So that's kind of the happy place right there, is you want to be able to have something that's small and defined enough that you can go over it, skim it quickly within a few minutes, look at it, and then have a little break, or walk away, or write yourself out your questions that you want, and then come back and read it and actually get those details. So do your skimming of your first little section, and then do your questions for your first little section, and then do your reading. Just set these small bite-sized sections that you can actually dive into. And then you can do scanning the next day. Scanning does not have to be done the same day. It's done later on, the next day or 2 days later, or whenever you have time to come back to that subject. Make sure you have a clear goal in mind. You should have a clear start and end point for your reading activities. You should have a clear start and end point for your reading, the activities you want to do, and how you plan on capturing the information. And this is before you even start. So today I have 25 minutes. In this 25-minute period, I am going to skim this passage and write down questions. In the next 25, then I'm going to have a 5-minute break because I'm using the Pomodoro method. And in the next 25 minutes, I'm going to read it and highlight it. Those are very, very clear goals for each of the 25-minute blocks. So they are definitely smart goals. They're specific. I know exactly what I'm going to do, and I know exactly how I'm going to do it. They're measurable. I either do this section because I have a clear start and end point, or I don't. They are achievable. Yes, this is something that I can do in 25 minutes because it's only a page and a half of skimming, and I don't have to actually sit down and read it word for word. It is relevant. Yes, this topic is relevant because I have to read this section of textbook and learn about these sponges. And it is time sensitive. It's 25 minutes to do A, B, and C. So that is a very clear goal that's achievable, and you're going to be able to make progress because it is a SMART goal. Reward yourself. Reading and studying in general can be a very stressful process. Make sure to take breaks and reward yourself for accomplishing what you set out to do. Some students give themselves a treat after every section they read. Others will have a bigger reward at the end. Choose the reward that's best for you and make sure you reward yourself. You deserve it. So this can be anything. if you have the Pomodoro method, then you have those if you use the Pomodoro method, then you have those 5-minute breaks in between. So you can go get a refill of your coffee. You can run downstairs and get a brownie. You can, have a chocolate bar when you finish your reading, or whatever it is that you like to reward yourself with. I know everything I just talked about was food. Maybe I'm hungry. But the important thing is that you reward yourself. If your reward is social media, maybe you get to go on social media for your 5-minute break, or whatever it is that you reward yourself so you can start that positive reinforcement cycle. A session is not a sitting. A study session can last for hours, but in that time, you need to take breaks and switch up the material and activities. Your brain will get tired of reading for 8 hours straight, and you will get diminishing gains at some point. Try to switch up your study activity at least hourly to stay engaged. Now, I discussed the Pomodoro method just a second ago, and let me link that as well. It might be linked, but I'm going to add another, I'm going to add it, double check and add it just in case. So the Pomodoro method is a study method, and you have 25-minute focus intervals broken up with a 5-minute break. After 4 focus intervals, you get a 20-minute break. And this is for a lot of reasons that I won't dive into. I will link that in the description. So with the Pomodoro method, you're breaking it up every 25 minutes, and you can come back to the same topic or activity within those 25 minutes. You can do that as long as you want. You can have 1 hour, or you can do it every 25 minutes. I would recommend that after an hour, you either change the subject or the activity, or both. So for example, if you are studying biology for 2 25-minute sessions, that's essentially an hour. So for the next 2, go and study philosophy and do something different for philosophy. Then come back and study that biology again, if that's what you need to study. And then after that, if you want to study chemistry, then study chemistry for an hour. But then at least every hour, switch up the subject. And this is just going to keep your brain moving. It's not going to get overstimulated by the same information, going over it over and over and over again. You're giving it something new to think about. So you're kind of switching lanes, and that's going to help refresh your brain when you come back to it. So if you are planning those marathon study sessions, maybe you do have one subject that you really need to focus on, but still have some other things that you need to do. Even if you only break it up for a 25-minute block and you do something else for 25 minutes. So you do 1 hour of biology, 25 minutes of philosophy, 1 hour of biology, 25 minutes of chemistry. Whatever you do, just try and break it up so that you do have a rest. So your brain has the opportunity to think about something else for a little while, so that you're not just hammering in the same stuff over and over again and exhausting your brain. So take frequent breaks. In addition to switching up activities, give yourself breaks. Your brain needs to rest. Try the Pomodoro method to take short breaks between focus intervals and refresh your brain and avoid workout. So I'm not going to drill in the Pomodoro method. I just talked about it quite exhaustively in the last couple of sections. Again, it's linked in the description if you do want to learn more about it. So break down chapters into the smallest possible unit. Subheadings are an excellent gauge, but sections can also be Subheadings are an excellent gauge, but sections can also be a page or several pages. Work through your entire set of reading activities for each section separately. So skim the subtopic, read and highlight, go back and take notes, and then scan it later. Do each one of those, do that series of steps, like the skim, read, take notes, scan, do each one of those processes separately for each section. Don't just skim one section and then skim the next section and then skim the next section and then read. Don't batch it that way. Batch it by subsection. So skim, read, highlight, take notes, And then next section, skim, read, highlight, take notes. And then the next day or a couple days later, then go through and start scanning. Oh, there is a link here to steal my reading strategy. So if you want to learn more about reading strategies, you can definitely check it out here. There is also an entire unit for reading strategies in the digital course. And that helps you to create, it not only shares my full reading strategy and explains it, it will also guide you through creating your own. So both skimming and scanning a passage of text are surprisingly effective study strategies. It not only boosts reading comprehension and recall, but also increases the overall speed of reading. This has been proven in studies time and time again, yet it is shockingly underused. Yet it is a shockingly underused technique. Introduce skimming as a pre-reading activity to your study session warm-up. This will help you prime your brain and prepare you to take in the information you want. You'll be more likely to remember it upon reviewing it when you actually read and take notes. Follow this up by scanning your textbook and notebook and notes. Follow this up by scanning your textbook and notes often. This will help you reinforce the links of the information and recall it better during test time. The more often you review and reflect on these concepts, the easier it will be to remember not to forget them. Don't forget to pick up that free study planner and activity tracker for more activities that you can easily track and integrate into your study session. Okay, so that is the entire article of skimming and scanning. I went into that exhaustively on not only how you can add it to your study strategy, why it's effective, how it's effective. So we've gotten all of that out of the way. We went on a deep dive there. So let's close that down. And now, of course, it is Friday, and Friday is goal day. So we are going to review goals. We're going to set some goals for next week. You know how much I love to set goals and track them. I love hearing your goals. So definitely let me know. Sorry. So definitely let me know in the comments below. Let me know your goals. Let me, down in the description are all of my social media handles. If you want to share them on social media with me, definitely just DM me on Instagram. I love sharing them. I love having this community where we can hold each other accountable to our goal setting and just make sure that we are making the progress we want. So my big goal for last week was, one, I wanted to get my last reading comprehension article up. And then I had some self-care goals and stuff like that. And let me tell you, if you were here for the chaos stream on Wednesday, you already know that I was like just coming out of my sickness slump. I was in a bad way this past week. It was pretty gnarly. So that actually meant I did a surprising amount of self-care because I was just in bed for about 4 days and did absolutely nothing but laid in bed and slept, which was glorious. Like, it was really, really glorious. So yeah, I definitely got my self-care sessions just for the simple fact that I didn't get out of bed. The other thing was my article. I did get it published. It is up. It is live. I'm just looking for it now because I can totally look me in the eyes. I can totally multitask. It's a thing that I can do. Not really. Here we go. I just found it here. Let me just share the screen and then you can actually see that I am actually trying to share a thing with you and I just can't see anything. Okay, so here we go. Concept maps. Let's click on concept maps. So here we go. Here is the new article. I think it's sharing with you. Let's check. Okay, perfect. I don't have to reshare. So here it is. I literally just posted this like moments before. So how to get the best use of concept maps. I have a couple more things to like clear out and add, but the thing is, after falling short on my goals last week because life, I got this up, and so I'm totally proud of myself. I hit all 3 of my goals and milestones this week. I feel great about it. I think what the difference was I just tried to be so much more intentional, and I actually have been taking a step back. So I've been so much more focused just on slowly getting over my illness and really, really focusing on how I spend my time and making sure to do what I felt in the moment, kind of like follow what my body needed and wanted, and be able to kind of coast off of that, the ebb and flow there. So I was able to like listen to myself and be like, no, I don't feel, all I want to do is curl up in a ball today and actually do that, just curl up in the ball like I wanted to. And then all of a sudden I would get like this great big burst of energy, and I'd be like, you know what, I feel great, I feel creative, I feel like it's time to start writing, let's do this. So I think that's the biggest thing that helped me this week, looking back over my progress. And that might be different for you. So make sure that you do look back over the progress you made this week and figure out what was it that helped you feel better? What was it that made you feel worse or not feel better? What was it that helped you make more progress? What was it that stopped you from making progress? And how did that work? So that is a huge help in auditing your progress and like making sure that you are, I don't want to use the word audit, but reviewing your progress, tracking your progress, and just trying to see how you're going with your goals, how you're staying on track and progressing and making the progress, making the movements that you want to. So new goals. I have a couple more articles that I want to put out. Let me see. I published concept maps. I'm looking and see, I want to publish. Okay, so the next, if we go to the website, we know we are revamping. So now we have finished reading strategies. We finished note-taking techniques. And now I just want to finish up the exam prep section. So I have one article that is also, yes, I wrote 2 articles. I have another article that's ready, but I want to also write 2 more. For my exam prep section. And this is why, because I am really excited to move on and start really filling out the Learn tab. And right now I'm still basically doing a lot of the generalization and fundamental things. But I wanted to make sure that I had reading strategies, note-taking strategies, exam prep, and essays and academic writing. I wanted to make sure that those fundamental categories that everybody was going to need were up. And now I want to actually get into some of the more specific details, the more specific subjects. And I'm really excited to build out that portion of the website. I'm so excited. As you may or may not have known, I was a science major and I loved it. And I want to be able to just share that knowledge and go through and maybe we will set aside a time in the new year and I can go over all of the stuff I've been working for and all of the stuff that I'm hoping to share with you in the new year. I think that would be great and awesome. And I want to be able to provide a bunch of study materials and stuff like that. But first, I have to finish this project. I need to just focus on one thing at a time and finish this project. So I'm actually feeling quite inspired to work on this right now. Again, you share your goals with me in the description on Instagram. And while you're down there sharing your goals, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I put out new videos every week, and they are always about study tips, organizational hacks, and homework help to help you with the study struggle. If you need help making that study guide, don't forget to go and grab that study guide template and or partake in all of the useful resources on the website. But in the meantime, I'm still sharing, aren't I? And until next time, I hope you have an amazing adventure.